Every year on the 9th of December, the world commemorates International Anti-Corruption Day, and the theme for this year is United Against Corruption. To talk about the dangers of political corruption in South Africa is Action SA KwaZulu-Natal Chairperson Dr. Makosi Khoza and Free State University Chancellor Professor Bonang Mohale. Good evening to both of you, and thank you very much for joining us. Dr. Khoza, I will start with you. Recently in an interview, you spoke about the reasons why you left your previous political party to join Action SA. And you put it this way in your words: I left the ANC and I said I'm leaving the corrupt ANC. Look at what is happening during COVID-19. I want to put a question to you. Is corruption a thing that is happening within a party, or is corruption as a result of weak governance?
Well, I think it's all those factors. It's happening at a social level, it's happening at economic level, at business level, at institutional level. It's systemic. And truth be told, at political level, if there is no political will to deal with corruption, and if those that are speaking against corruption find themselves having to face harsh consequences, and those that are committing corruption always get just a slap on the wrist, obviously that perpetuates corruption.
Is this because of a shortage or lack of appeal for people who speak out against corruption? I mean, you say, for example, you used to think 85% of ANC leaders are corrupt. Now you've adjusted your numbers to 95% of the ANC leaders are corrupt. I mean, does that tell you that there is becoming more and more a shortage of people who are willing to speak out and actually act against corruption in the nation?
Absolutely. And I think the media has a very, very important role to play in fighting corruption, especially if they are going to be reporting on the issues of corruption where there has been consequence. Right now, look at what has happened with the Secretary General of the ANC. You had scores of people who came to court to support him. And to me, that speaks to a society that is broken. And indeed, I did say that I have subsequently revised my figures upwards. Because I mean, even people like Vincent Smith, I used to think that we're speaking the same language. And suddenly I find some of those people are implicated during the state capture commission. So I'm saying the media has a very, very important role to play. Remember, corruption is not just a legal issue. It's a moral and ethical issue. It's a cultural issue. We've got to change the culture of a society.
Professor Mohale, in your piece that you wrote on the Business Day, you say government needs to restore public trust by bringing corrupt officials to book. Now, I had a conversation, I think on Sunday, with Umalusi following the leak in the papers, right? And I said, well, part of the reason why these papers leak is because government hires dishonest people, people who lack integrity, people who don't really understand that leaking a paper can ruin a nation, can ruin children, can ruin their future. Right? And the answer from Malusi says, well, government systems are tamper-proof. This is what he says. They are tamper-proof. It's not that government does not put systems in place, but it's individuals who are corrupt.
In fact, you are absolutely correct. You will remember that in our 26 years of democracy, in fact, the exam leaks for grade 12 started as far back as 2009. And only now are we taking concerted and national action. But for me, a broader subject of corruption in supporting my sister is that corruption diverts money from service delivery. The goods and services that have been paid for often do not get delivered. It reduces the quality of goods and services, as we hear in the Zondo Commission. It increases the cost of doing business for everybody. It kills competitors and it reduces international competitiveness. It always disproportionately affects the poor because the middle class and the rich can always make a plan. It discourages foreign direct investment, local direct investment, and local savings. It kills entrepreneurship and it reduces planned and preventative maintenance in the more than 740 state-owned enterprises and state-owned companies, and therefore there is little money that is left to go into infrastructure. In fact, when you see where we are as a people with great natural endowments, all that one has to do is to do a back of the cigarette box calculation that says, if the interest rate are 8% and CPI is 4%, we must be growing at 4% GDP. Otherwise, we are going backwards. The truth of the matter is that for this year, we'll see a contraction of anything between 7 and 8% for the whole year. Yeah. And yet population growth is 1.5%. Yeah. So in nominal and real terms, we are actually going backwards. Sorry, my brother, you wanted to intervene.
Yet the daylight pillage of our resources continues unabated. What needs to happen? Let's look at the COVID-19 situation. The late Auditor General, may his soul rest in peace, decided that when they were about to release this money, he's going to do a little bit of a proactive move and went to the president and said, President, I want to actually audit this in real time as this money comes out so that I can be able to pick this up and alert the authorities in time. Yet that still didn't seem to have deterred those who wanted to steal, even in a time of a pandemic.
You're absolutely correct. In fact, no less than 7 organizations warned President Matamela Ramaphosa and his government to say this 500 billion socio-economic stimulus is going to be stolen. But remember, when the pandemic hit us, it found us already prostrate, face down and on the floor. We were just recovering from the downgrades. We were already in a technical recession, but we had not even begun recovering from the state capture and therefore the 9 wasted years. And the math is really not in our side. So for me, when you look at how much trouble we are in, you'll see that, in fact, I think our debt to GDP ratio is the one that needs to frighten us, because it used to be only 4% less than a decade ago. It's now going to 16%. Our debt in real terms is more than 3 trillion rands, which means we're indebting not only our children, but our grandchildren. We're spending 20 billion just on servicing costs. In fact, 70% of what we collect from revenue services, we spend in public sector wage bill, in servicing debt, and in social security. Only 30% is left for us to invest on the productive side of the economy and therefore in infrastructure. That's why we're in a spot of bother. Our deficit was 4%, now it's edging towards 16%. Back to you, my brother.
Dr. Khoza, do you believe President Cyril Ramaphosa is the man to lead this fight back against corruption?
You know, let me tell you something. I think everybody has a role to play here. And I do think that if the president is going to be decisive about it, he has to walk the talk. Unfortunately, recently he has been implicated, obviously implicated by somebody who is discredited. I admit that, the former CEO of Eskom. The fact that he didn't pay 1.5 billion that was owed to Eskom. So I'm saying the leaders, they have to understand that what they do impacts on the effectiveness of how we fight corruption. If they are soft on corruption, if corruption then is seen as a factional battle and not fought on the principle of without faith, fear, favor, or prejudice, then we are self-sabotaging as a country. I am not saying Cyril Ramaphosa is not the right man to do the job. I am saying he must do the right thing as our president.
Professor Mohale, you write, you argue South Africa desperately needs ethical and transparent leadership. If you ask any leader in government, in any position of power right now, are you ethical? I'm sure most of them will tell you that they are. But if you ask them if they are transparent, that question might be a little bit tricky, including the president himself and how transparent he is.
But also the third component of that is that we need final accountability. So the ANC takes a resolution in 2007 to say anybody that has been charged with corruption must step aside with immediate effect. Today, we are still arguing about the Secretary General, and yet the resolution was taken in December 2017 and was reiterated. I think our problem as a people with great natural endowments is that we don't have the same picture, and therefore we don't have the same prognosis, and therefore we don't have the same plan. We are not even reasonably coherent. You see, in the olden days, all of us had a common enemy called apartheid. That's why we prevailed. That's why we were able to emerge triumphant and victorious. At the moment, what is the common enemy? What is the common cause for common good? I think we need to go back to the values that were held near and absolutely sacrosanct by our forebears. At the moment, I think it is free for all. The corruption, Sis Makosi Khoza is absolutely correct, is both systemic and systematic. 2007 in Polokwane was about our turn to eat too. When you start stealing money from the poor and the hungry, and you steal PPE money from the sick and the dying, then you know that, in fact, you don't need the virus. You are already rotten to the core. A society that values more the loss of the economy than the loss of lives honestly doesn't need a virus. It is already rotten to the core. Back to you, sir.
Professor Ramaphosa, I appreciate your time. Thank you very much for joining us tonight. Dr. Makosi Khoza, Chairperson of the KwaZulu-Natal Action SA. I appreciate your time tonight as well.